Moses and the Exodus, Part 1, The Origin Story. Jews and Christians share the Hebrew Scriptures, what we were taught to call the Old Testament, though that name can be seen as insulting to our Jewish friends. Jews call it the Tanakh, an acronym which refers to the Torah, the law, the Nevi'im, the prophets, and the Ketuvim, the writings. TNK, the Tanakh. In addition to these scriptures, Jews also have the Talmud, a large collection of writings by thousands of rabbis, sharing teachings and giving opinions on Jewish law and theology. Christians, on the other hand, use the Hebrew Scriptures too, but also have a collection of Greek scriptures, what is often called the New Testament. Beyond sharing a large collection of scriptures, Jews and Christians also share a sense of God's redeeming influence in the world. We each have a central story within our texts that shapes our sense of our collective relationship with God. Christians have the person of Jesus, with the stories of his life and teachings found mainly in 4 books, the Gospels of Matthew and Mark and Luke and John. For Jewish people, the central story of their relationship with God is revealed in the story of the Exodus, again found in 4 books, 4 of the 5 books that make up the Torah or law portion of the Hebrew Scriptures: Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The story of the Exodus for Jewish faith and practice could be seen as equivalent to the story of Jesus' birth and ministry and death and resurrection for Christian faith and practice. These stories are so foundational to how we come to understand our identity as people who belong to God. So I think it is really important that we know and understand the story of the Exodus, to understand how God's redeeming work was experienced before the time of Jesus, and how Jesus would have been raised to understand the faith of his people. There are even places in the gospel in which we can see the writer portraying Jesus as a Moses figure, knowing how powerful the Exodus story would be to help people understand what God was doing in Jesus' life. So we're going to spend the next few weeks going through the book of Exodus to remind ourselves of all the rich detail of the story and how God calls individuals to play a role in God's redemption of the chosen people. Now, the book of Genesis ends with the story of Joseph reconciling with his 11 brothers. If you remember, Joseph was sold into slavery, but through that horrible betrayal, Joseph is able to become close with the Egyptian Pharaoh and helps him prepare for a coming drought and becomes a hero because of it. His 11 brothers later come to throw themselves on his mercy when they are starving, and he forgives them. The Pharaoh allows them to bring their flocks and their families and start a new life in Egypt because of his relationship with Joseph. They are foreigners from Canaan and refugees, but they are made welcome in this new land. And so we come to the first chapter of the book of Exodus, which begins by telling us that the 12 brothers have had numerous descendants, and now their generation has passed away. The land is filling up with their grandchildren. And then we read these words in verse 8. Now a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And with that, the fortunes of the descendants of Jacob, the 12 tribes, the Israelites, changes drastically. As Reverend David Loss says on his website, Working Preacher, The beginning of Exodus starts on a chilling note. A ruler wishing to solidify his political base identifies a common enemy, a scapegoat, to blame for whatever current problems plague society. We've seen this before. In the 30s especially, though not exclusively in Germany, it was the Jews. More recently, it has been, by turns, illegal immigrants, welfare moms, gays, the undeserving poor, and Muslims. One of the chief manifestations of sin is our penchant for defining ourselves over and against others, and in the process denying others their essential humanity, their status as beloved children of God. This time around, it's the ancient Israelites. They get fingered by a Pharaoh who has conveniently forgotten that for generations, the Israelites he names as possible terrorists have been considered allies and honored guests. And so he first enslaves them and then turns to even darker means, telling the Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, to kill all the Hebrew baby boys that are delivered. God's sense of irony arises. The Pharaoh is apparently not afraid of girl babies and orders only that the boys be killed. And yet it is the action and bravery of women that his fears will come to pass, and he will lose his hold over the Israelites. The scriptures tell us that Shiphrah and Puah, the Hebrew midwives, fear God. They know who they belong to and what faithfulness requires, and they do not obey Pharaoh's deadly command. But as they defy him, they use his own prejudices against him. When he confronts them to ask why the boy babies haven't been killed, they say, "Oh, these women aren't like those delicate Egyptian women. Hebrew women are hardy stock and give birth before anyone can help them." Pharaoh believes their story, and they are not punished, but rewarded by God for their faithful action. But the Pharaoh doesn't give up. Now he commands all his people, saying, "Every boy that is born to the Hebrews you shall throw into the Nile, but you shall let every girl live." And again, the delicious irony of God arises in the choice of a Levite woman who sees her newborn son and sees that he is good, using the same word God uses in the story of creation. She does throw him into the Nile, but first she creates an ark for him, a waterproof basket to keep him safe in the water. The baby's sister watches as the little ark floats by the shore. And then yet another group of women approach. The Pharaoh's own daughter has come to bathe, accompanied by her female servants. And when she discovers the baby, she is moved by his cries and seeks to protect him. The baby's sister is right at hand, offering to find a woman to nurse the baby for her. The Pharaoh's daughter agrees and ends up paying the baby's mother to care for her own child. It's delicious the way that it comes together. When the child is weaned, the Pharaoh's daughter adopts him and calls him Moses, the one drawn out. This baby boy, forbidden to live, is protected by two midwives, by his mother, by his sister, and by the Pharaoh's daughter, and even by her maidservants. At least 7 women and girls who each make a decision to do what is right in the moment, to stand up to the powers of death and control, and find a way to protect the vulnerable. At this point in the story, God is kind of a background character. We haven't yet heard a voice or seen a burning bush or a parting sea. Instead, God is revealed in the actions of people. God blesses the Israelites with descendants, gives them courage and wit and strength, and uses their disobedience to make a way for Israelites to find freedom. Now Moses does come to be the hero of this story. Alongside his faithful brother Aaron and sister Miriam, he is the leader, bringing the Israelites out of slavery. And yet his story cannot begin without the quiet refusal of several women to do what they are told. It's a great reminder for us that our actions, our choices, our decisions have a ripple effect in the world. For good or ill, our choices have consequences, even if we cannot yet see what they are. It can be as small a choice as choosing fair trade chocolate to give out at Halloween, or being kind to a newcomer in your community. Or it can be a big choice, like voting or speaking up at a meeting, even though your knees are knocking together. The Exodus story reminds us that there are forces of evil in the world, systems and people determined to seize power or make money off of the backs of the most vulnerable. Systems that silence opposition and abuse the natural world. But the story also reminds us that each person can choose to say yes or no. Our compassion, our willingness to learn, our courage to act can affect people far beyond our small circles. And where is God? Whispering in the hearts of the midwives, strengthening the resolve of a mother, stirring the compassion of a privileged daughter, and setting the stage for future acts of grace and power. Where might we be inspired to take action this week? Let us be observant, pay attention, and do our part to promote justice and share love and build a future for all of God's children. One prayer, one action, one choice at a time. May it be so for you and for me.